Everyone, thank you for coming to join us for our inaugural series on traditional fibers' new uses. Today we have a guest speaker who is an expert and has done her research on KENAF, Dr. Mary Warnock from the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville, where she was a professor, and formerly she was the director of the School of Human Environmental Sciences. She has also been the U.S. President for the International Federation for Home Economics and has a wealth of international experience. She teaches textiles, design, and a few other courses, and she has been a strong supporter of our program here at UAPB. We would like to welcome Dr. Warnock and also Keith Warnock, who is manager of Indian Bluff Farms up in the Fayetteville area. And he has worked at the Consumer Testing Services in that region, which does consumer product testing, including textiles, for companies such as Walmart. So let's welcome our guests, and we'll turn it over to Dr. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having both of us today. And I want to express my appreciation to our son Keith, because as we go through the presentation today, you will find out that he has been extremely instrumental in getting things done for this particular project. And when Dr. Crippen called, she said, "I'm going to send you a title." She sent Traditional Fibers New Uses. And I thought, okay, and I'm supposed to come up with something related to that. And she said, "Your subject matter is KENAF." And I said, fine. And there are several films that are already out on other fibers, and they go from field to product. Dr. Crippen also told me that you as students are very interested in product development, that you are interested in sustainability, eco-friendly fibers, and you want to produce products of your own, possibly for home-based businesses to sell, fundraisers, etc. So I thought, okay, today we'll go from field to product. And then, in the wee hours of the morning when one wakes up and says, that's a good title, but maybe there's something more, I thought because of the products that have already been produced, and because they were associated with a former regional research project, and that regional research project, its major objective was to create value-added products. And that's what you see before us today, are the value-added products that were created during that particular research period. So I thought, okay, some of the photographs that you're going to see also reflect that time. But we also need to go one step farther. We also need to take a good look at the future and see where we're going with sustainability, environmental issues, and the products that can be developed that can use KENAF, which we already know is an eco-friendly fiber. So then I came up with a second title, Reflection and Vision. So you can always have more than one title, I guess. So let's have a go. Our presentation outline today, we're going to cover a lot of territory. We're going to move very fast, so we're going to be on the fast track today. So we're actually going to start out with the definition of the fiber. And Dr. Crippen and I already have, I guess, an issue. I say KENAF, she says KENAF. Okay? And that's okay. There really is no real way to pronounce the fiber. It is however you want to pronounce it. So KENAF, KENAF, it really doesn't matter. I'm going to be from the Deep South. I'm going to say KENAF. She's a little bit more British. She'll say KENAF, but that's all right. But we'll talk about a definition of the fiber, no matter how you pronounce it. We also want to know where this fiber comes from, how old it is, okay? Now I'm facing retirement. I know exactly how old I am, so we're gonna find out how old this fiber is too. We wanna also talk about some cultivars. Do y'all know what cultivars are? Some say yes. How many say yes? Many say no. Cultivars are what you start with in creating a fiber from the genetics. So we're going to talk a little bit about cultivars. Fiber characteristics. We have to know what characteristics the fiber has in order to produce anything, whether it's paper, We have a purse. We have baskets. We have wallpaper today. So it really doesn't matter, but we still have to know what we're dealing with. Fiber preparation. How do you deal with the fiber? We grow it. It's out of the field. How are you going to go get it? What are you going to do with it? And then, oh my goodness, what is it going to look like in the end? So we've got to deal with that. And then some end products and new uses, because we have come a long way with product development. You see the iPads, you see the technology, but what has happened to some of our natural fibers, of which KENAF is part of that? So we're going to take a look at some innovative types of products. Let's begin with our definition to begin with. Some things that we already know. If you look in your textiles textbook, you will see the definition there says it is a cellulosic bast fiber. Now, we have to pick it apart a little bit. Cellulosic, you may relate to cotton. But KENAF also has a cellulosic molecular structure. So in other words, it's going to have carbons, hydrogens, and oxygens. They're just sort of put together a little bit differently from what cotton would be. If it had the same structure as cotton, it would be cotton, but it's not, so it's a little bit different there. But the fiber itself being bast tells us that it has a core, and then it has fibers surrounding that core, and it's the fibers that we want to capture. So the question is, how do I get the fibers separated from the core when it looks like this? This is the inner core, this part. These are actually my fibers. They're not usable. We can't do anything with them. We must go through the processing of them so that we can get them, so that we can actually do something with them, such as spin. We have spinning, we have knitting, and so that we can crochet, etc. But the object of the game is to separate the fibers from this core, knowing that the core is on the inside and the fibers are on the outside. Now, we also know that the fiber belongs to the hibiscus family. Okay? That's why it's cellulosic. Cotton also belongs to the hibiscus family. Why? Because they bloom. We plant the seed, plants grow, they bloom, and you'll see the bloom here. So we have, it flowers, okay, so we have that. Then, we know it's related to cotton, but did you also know it's related to okra? Do y'all eat okra? Yes. Oh, it's wonderful. Fried okra is the best, okay? But if you look at the plant in your garden, it looks very similar to this. It's stalky, and when you go out there, you can pull the fibers from it, and believe it or not, you can actually salvage the okra fibers and actually produce a product from okra, okay? So next time you're looking for an innovative product, come out to the garden. You can find some good things there. Also, it's very similar to hemp. Now, we do not grow a lot of hemp in the United States just simply because it is considered in some cases to be a carcinogenic. It is a drug as such, and so we don't do that. But you can also see in the photograph here the core and then the fiber structure. And we do have some on the table here that is a little bit better example than this one. So, we'll clean up our computer. Origin? It's over 4,000 years old. Where did it come from? Yes, it does come from Africa. So, and this is how I got interested in the fiber, because of that regional research project. We wanted to have an alternative crop for Arkansas. We grow wheat, cotton, soybeans, as far as commodities are concerned. In the rotation of some of these crops, there needs to be an alternative for the producer or the farmer. So over 20 years ago, myself and colleagues thought that KENAF would be a good crop producer. It would be a money maker, and then we could have lots of different types of value-added products. So, knowing that the KENAF would grow in Africa, decided that it would probably grow anywhere else in the United States, and we have proven that it does. It does not need a lot of water. It needs a lot of sunshine, but it truly will grow anywhere, irrespective of the soil. Doesn't matter about the nitrogen, the phosphorus contents. You don't have to spray it for herbicides and pesticides. You don't have to do anything except plant the seeds and watch it grow, and it works. So currently, most of the KENAF in the world is grown in India as well as Thailand. So from an import fiber, we import here in the United States. We do have thousands of acres, and when I say thousands, probably 25 to 30,000 acres here in the United States, but it is not enough to actually have a processing plant here in the United States. There is one over in Mississippi, so it is still up and operational, but it cannot handle a lot of fibers. So we here again in the United States do not actually produce KENAF products as such. But the idea in the beginning was to have an alternative cash crop for the state of Arkansas. And as you can see here, it began as a rope and twine product. So come a long way with that. We were talking about cultivars just a minute ago. Cultivars actually, the genetics behind the fiber itself. Also, there are several different types of cultivars. In fact, there are about 25 that are actually on the market. I didn't list all 25 here. I've only given you the ones that are the most appropriate. Salvador and V36 really are not actually grown in this particular country, but they are grown in India and Thailand. Everglades 41. Everglades 41 is a popular one, and it has, I'm going to call it the fan-shaped leaf. Tainung number 1 and Tainung number 2, also very popular. They have the palm leaf. What does this look like? What? Looks like marijuana, doesn't it? Okay. That becomes another issue. But for purposes for the products today, I use Tainung number 2 with the palm leaf. And you can see the plant itself grows over 10 feet tall, and it grows very similar to bamboo. So if you can picture bamboo in your mind, it grows about, can become about this large in diameter, and it's over 10 feet tall. So then the issue becomes, how are you going to harvest this wonderful, this beautiful plant? So because the palm leaf looks like marijuana, and Keith is my driver, he harvested the plants, and I'll show you this in just a minute. Maybe it's the next one coming up. We'll come back to this, but in the harvesting of this, we had to carry all of these fibers in the back of the truck. They do look like marijuana. If you are stopped, most, I will say, government officials, is that an appropriate word? Police people would not know the difference. So every time we were trucking the fibers from one location to the other, and we have trucked them from Mississippi, from Boonville, Arkansas, to Fayetteville, we always had to have a letter from the person in charge stating that these are Tainung number 2 plants, and they are not related to marijuana and cannot be smoked. So if you smoke the palm leaf, let's put it this way, you will go to the hospital and have unfavorable conditions there. So the characteristics that we're looking for in this particular fiber, it is very strong. That's why it was first used in twine and in cordage because of the strength capacity. The plant itself has a very high yield. You can get a lot of fibers all at one time. It's very lustrous. You can see from some of the products here that it has that sheen and shine to it, so we want that. It's also hydrophobic, and it seems like being hydrophobic and then having high moisture regain would contradict each other, but it really doesn't. It's hydrophobic because it has pectin, waxes, and lignin in it. You're probably familiar with waxes and pectins, but not necessarily the lignin. The lignin is like a glue. And if you wet the KENAF and if you boil it, you can extract the lignin out, and it looks very much like a gluey type substance, and it's about the color of the counters in this room, the dark brown color. You can use that substance for paint thinners as a base, oils, and also for wax components, so you can use it as a byproduct. But here again, we're after the fibers, but yes, the fibers are hydrophobic, but if the water sits there long enough, they will start to absorb the water, and then they become highly absorbent. So yes, it sounds contradictory, but no, they're not. It can be bleached. It can be bleached with the natural sunshine. You can also use chemical bleaching, just like we would put on our hair. And it can be dyed. I have a photograph of the dye machine that happens to be in my particular textiles lab, and it's a miniature, but we can dye fibers as well as small pieces of fabric there. So it can be dyed, and as you can see, we have some beautiful colors here. We've used reactive dyes. Reactive dyes were specifically developed for cotton fibers, but it works great on KENAF simply because, what are they? First cousins, cotton, cellulosic, KENAF, cellulosic. Dyes can be used on both of those. But I have also used some RIT dye, and it works just as well, so you can do that. Eco-friendly. Right now the big buzzword is sustainability. So yes, KENAF, very eco-friendly. We have done some other types of research on soil burial. So we do know that the mats can biodegrade and what we do with the mats, and there's one here on the counter, yes, in the basket here. We can put grass seeds in those mats. We can put them on the side of the road where they're doing the construction, such as between here and Little Rock. And the mat will biodegrade and disintegrate, and the grass seeds come up. So we can do the same thing with flower containers. So those mats become very important. So, but yes, they do biodegrade. We have actually buried KENAF fabrics, and here again, we know that even after 7 days, which is only 1 week, that the microbes in the soil do attack the fabric structure, and it will biodegrade. And it does support mold and mildew. So therefore, the mold and mildew will attack the fiber structure and it will disintegrate. So eco-friendly, yes. Fiber preparation. Put a list of the steps together because we need to plant. We have to harvest our 10-foot stalks. We have to ret. Now, if you looked at these steps, you would say, oh, that sounds just like flax. Yes, it is. It's just done a little bit differently. Now, some of the pictures that I'm going to show you are from my own research, and I have called it grassroots research because keep in mind, I'm developing products for the cottage industry that anyone can actually produce and then hopefully earn money doing that. So I've taken the approach that grassroots works for me. You can do it in your backyard. So retting, we want to talk about retting. Another word for retting or a definition is rotting. So we're going to rot away the fibers because remember, we have to get those fibers from that stalk. We want to decorticate, so we want to get rid of the core. We need to dry our fibers. We need to hatchel. So that may be a new term for you, but I'll show you some hatchels that you can use. Then we want to produce some yarn and then fabric, and then of course we'll produce some different types of products. Even cars today are made from KENAF. They have KENAF parts in them. So let's start with planting. When are we going to plant? These are just some typical seeds. They have not really been blown up out of proportion here. These really are the seeds that are fairly large. They have to be planted after the last killing frost in the spring. This is another reason that I was looking at KENAF as an alternative cash crop. Because if you play your cards right, you can actually have 2 plantings and 2 harvests during the same summer growing season. So if you plant in May after the last killing frost, then you have about 90, but no more than 150 days, so the plant can grow, you can harvest, and then you can turn right around again and plant because it will continue to grow until the last killing frost of the season. So your KENAF, we might be harvesting really right now in the Fayetteville area. It was 18 last night. I think it was probably pretty nippy here too, but that would be our first real killing frost that we've had in northwest Arkansas. But these are your seeds. What are we going to do? We're just going to plow it up and throw them out there. So We planted our seeds, and this is how we're going to harvest. Several different methods. Now, the one that was used at the Boonville Research Experiment Station is in the top photo, and it almost looks like a side sickle mower, and this will be the sickle here, and it's just a push mower, and so you can just mow it off at the ground. You can harvest the plant by pulling it up out of the ground, or you can cut it off at the ground. Most people cut it off. And here's Keith, younger days, with his weed eater over there. What were you using, a beaver blade?
It is, yes, a brush blade.
Okay, so you don't use the kind that has the orange strings in it, so you have to have something that's fairly durable. And here we have the big combine that can also be used if you have many, many acres. You can also use, when I was at Baton Rouge at Southern University, they had a KENAF plot. It was my chore to go down and retrieve some of the KENAF stalks, and the technician there came out to cut with a chainsaw. So that was kind of an interesting concept, but you can choose your method, okay? We have also harvested with machete just as well. So in Africa, they are certainly using machetes as well as some of the mowers. In the retting process, here again, this is where Keith and actually the husband got in on this one, because we're talking about big bundles and they're pretty heavy. But here again, think grassroots research. We have a stalk. We must get the fibers extracted from the core, decortication, etc. So in the retting process, we're talking about rotting away the fibers. So in this rotting or retting process, we use just plain old water. Water has its own enzymes. It also, if it sits there long enough, it will create its own microbes, and you will have a microbial reaction, and it will cause the fibers to eventually separate from the core itself. This takes about 4 to 6 weeks, and it smells like pig manure. So it's not something you want to do in your house, okay? You can do this. But also found out when we put the water in the tanks that because they're cellulosic, because of the waxes, the pectins, and the lignin, they tend to float on the water. So here again, just put cinder blocks on them to hold them down into the water itself. Now, going back to flax, you can put it in a field, you can have it dew-retted, you can bundle it and put it in a field, a stream, a creek, in a pond. The only problem with KENAF putting it in a pond, if you throw it out of the pond to retrieve it, it's going to float. It has to be able to sink, okay? So putting it into the cattle watering troughs that Keith loaned us from the farm, we can put the KENAF in there, we can put the cinder blocks on top, and it works just great. And we're going to leave it in there. Now, the husband gets into the action here. You can see this is a family project, but here again, you have to get the fibers out of that water, and then to be able to separate the fibers from the core. How are you going to do it? And you need to get off the slime. You have no idea. Have you ever closed your eyes and reached into a pond that has algae on it and then squished it in your hands? It's a lovely concept, isn't it? That's exactly what's in those troughs, is the slime, it's the black mildew, it's the, what shall I say, just the icky stuff that's on top of those fibers, and you don't want that anymore. You have to wash it off. So, went and got the spray washer that we use on the heavy-duty equipment, our tractors and the combines and things like that, and so we can spray off the fibers, and it gets rid of the algae and the microbial materials that have grown on the surface of the fiber, but it also separates the fiber from the stalk. And so when you have sprayed it, then you don't have to do so much pulling off by hand, but you can actually strip the fibers from the stalk itself. Drying, here again, part of grassroots research. We're just going to take those fibers that we've actually pulled away from the core, put it on the back of a trailer. We're going to leave it out in the sunshine. Put it on a trailer that actually has a wire bed so that the air can circulate. It's in the sun, so we're going to get this beautiful honey-colored fiber from it. So it's quite extraordinary. And it dries, and it normally takes it, Keith, about a week to dry normally. We want to flip it from time to time. but you get this beautiful color. But here again, when it dries, it's going to be on the stiff side, just simply because it still has some of that lignin in it. So we'll have to figure out a way to deal with that. Now, the way that we dealt with those stiff fibers, keep in mind what our major objective here is. We want to make products. We want fibers that we can work with, that we can handle, and that we can process. So what are we going to do? We are going to develop a hatchel. Now, I didn't even know what a hatchel was. So I went over to the library, and they were kind enough to actually give me one out of the archives to take home with me. And this is the original one from the library. And I found out that a hatchel is a hand instrument that has nails and is used sort of like cards are to separate wool fibers or to separate your cotton fibers. We can use a nail bed in the case of KENAF and actually separate the fibers so that they become fibrous instead of in those thick cemented strips. So in our concept, we built a nail bed, and I took it to the lab, and then I found out that it scoots all over the lab bench. So went to Lowe's and got some C-clamps and bolted it onto the lab bench, and it worked just fine. The concept is that you take your individual strands of fibers. If you have a stalk that's 10 feet long, your fibers are going to be 10 feet long. So that's twice as tall as I am. So what are we going to do? We have to do something with those fibers. Cut them a little bit shorter, but we're going to take those fibers, we're going to pull them through the nail beds. So put the fibers on there, and it strips it. It separates the fibers one from the other. That way we can spin it or do whatever we want to with it. But I think it's a pretty unique concept for that. So how do we produce yarns? We can spin. See, the flax wheel can be used. Spinning wheel can be used there. We can do hand spinning. Drop spindle doesn't work quite as well as the spinning machine itself, the spinning wheel, but you can use the drop spindle, but the spinning wheel works a lot better. There are some hand spun yarns here. You'll see the, next to the purse in front of that. We do have some hand spun, and those were actually spun on a walking wheel that was a little bit bigger than the flax wheel. But we can spin. We can also do it at the commercial level. Ring spinning works the best. Open-end spinning right now is used commercially for cotton fibers. KENAF, I know, is kin to cotton, but it has too much trash in it and it would clog up the open-end rotors. So we want to do ring spinning there. But we can also have hand-woven products that can be produced, and we can also have mechanical looms and do it for the machine itself. And I will show you some products that have actually been made but mechanically in the industry. Products, new and old, but some of the products that have been made started out making hand paper. There are some here on the very front of the counter here. There's wallpaper, made our own flocking. You can take KENAF fibers and you can grind them. You can put them in what we call a wiling mill. It has very sharp blades. It rotates at over 60 cycles a minute. I mean, it's very, very fast, very, very sharp. It grinds those fibers into a powdery dust, and then we use it to flock the wallpaper with. Also used reactive dyes again for the ground materials, and then made handmade paper for note cards and things like that. Used a marbleizing effect on it. So lots of different types of paper products, and the screen that you see is the same one there, so very small product. Concept here again, if you can make something small, all you have to do is increase the size of it and make it large, so make small things. But paper products, this is a picture of the things that are out here today, so we'll not spend time with that. This is Dr. Catherine Boyd. She is Professor Emeritus at Mississippi State University, and she and I were on the same regional project, and that's what regional project means. People from the different regions in the U.S. can work on that project. So Mississippi State was very heavily involved in it, And because of the industry that they have in Mississippi State, they have a KENAF processing plant in their state. And they also have the ring spinning mills there, and they can actually make the yarns and the fabrics, and they are the ones who actually make the big cake of yarn here today. So you can see some of their products, and Dr. Boyd was instrumental in making wearing apparel from KENAF. So you can see the skirt and the top, machine-made fabric, but hand-constructed garments. So here again, we've tried very hard to get students involved in our research projects, and so this is an end product of one of the students at Mississippi State University. Also, wreaths have been made, flower pots, tote bags. We have a table runner here. And today, we see that KENAF can actually be used for forage. Now, we have not grown KENAF on our own property, except in a little garden plot, and yes, it grows. It'll even grow in a flower pot, and it'll grow in your backyard, so that's the joy of it. But you can bale it, and you can feed it to cattle. I've not seen any evidence of it being fed to horses. A little bit different digestive system, but it does work quite well for cattle. Absorbent materials. KENAF was actually used in the Gulf of Mexico when the oil spill occurred for the British Petroleum Company. And so those big tubes that look like sausages that they threw out into the water to collect the oil, some of that was KENAF. Also, they used a new material that has a carbon filler in it also. But KENAF is also being used in automobiles. Where are you going to see it? You're not going to see it on the outside of your car, but when you open up the trunk to put your groceries in, you're going to see KENAF. It's going to be the non-woven matte material that is inside the trunk. It's also going to be in your glove compartment. It's going to be, if you take the dashboard so that you take the instruments down, and behind that, it will also be an absorbent pad. So acoustical materials have also been made from KENAF. So we are getting into, I guess, getting away somewhat from handcrafts into automobile, housing industry, construction, etc. So we're moving more into a technological society. We have been in the past. Some of the new products that are on the market, we can take KENAF and we can actually mix it with some polyurethanes, and you'll see the soles for shoes. We can put it into matting for like your kitchens. We can put it into indoor, outdoor carpets, and we can just do all kinds of fun things with it by mixing it with polyurethanes. We've seen where they have been put into mats, but here again, we're looking at it from an acoustical standpoint. So in this particular room, if we wanted to make it more, I guess if it had a problem of echoing, then we could make panels out of KENAF. We could put them onto the walls and use them as bulletin boards as well as for acoustical purposes. So we can do that. You can see in the home industry, they're making a deck to put on your the back of your home so that you can go out instead of the treated wood, you have this. Now, talking about biodegradation a while ago, the mat that you see here in the basket, we're going to bury it into soil, and we have done several simulated landfill projects, and KENAF is wonderful. So we can bury it into the soil, put it in a growth chamber, and actually determine how long it stays in there, temperatures, moisture of the soil, etc. So, from my perspective, yes, KENAF, you have come a long way, baby. We've got a long way to go with it. Is it an alternative cash crop for Arkansas? Not yet. I'm not sure if it ever will be, but yes, it does grow. And as far as being an alternative cash crop, because we don't have a processing plant here in Arkansas, we're not going to see the returns. However, those in the Delta who live along the Mississippi can grow it and then take it across the river over to Mississippi to have it processed there. So yes, We've come a long way. We still have ways to go. But I thank you very much for your attention. And if you do have questions, I'll certainly be glad to entertain them. I do want you to come up and look at some of the products. And yes, you can touch them and see what they are. We've got everything from handbags to wallpaper to knit hats to baskets to all kinds of things. So please come take a look. Thank you so much for having me today.